the types of activities that we're involved in. So we're engaged in policy development, especially in the Council of Europe and in the UN. Our themes include culture, education, environment, the economy, human rights, and democracy. And we try to lobby parliamentarians to make the right decisions. We also worked in the sustainable development goals in areas also like climate change, which of course, as you know, is probably the world's most pressing issue. We are the scientists, the experts in climate and in landscape protection, and the landscape convention, which is signed by approximately 80 countries around the world to try to protect landscape rather than it being swallowed up by the large cities. We're involved in sustainable development goals, Rio +20, the Paris climate change talks. We were there, and we're also in the UN involved in the Habitat program, which is about smart cities, sustainable cities, trying to make the world much more sustainable for us, for our children and our children's children. We have a book series called Key Challenges in Geography, an open access journal. You're free to submit your publications there. You don't have to pay. And our aim is to translate the work of geoscientists into the policy arena. The journal has been going for about 10 years now, a bi-monthly newsletter, a whole string of projects. If you visit our website, these are our projects. For example, the one on the top left is about data literacy, understanding what information means, and then being able to empower young people to engage with policy. eValue is we're creating an atlas, digital atlas of values. And we have other projects on digital farming, digital humanities, and so on. So our goal is to communicate aspects of geography, and therefore, as a geographer, I was contacted and asked to do some short review of data that had been collected by the Ipsos Mori survey in 2020 about young people's perceptions and opinions across the Euromed region. So I'm going to talk about that, and I was given the brief to examine intercultural dialogue and the effect of digitalization on intercultural dialogue. And I think you're all studying this area. So really, definitions to begin with. Dialogue is about exchange between individuals and groups. It's about being inclusive and not leaving anyone out. And it's a powerful instrument to negotiate and to generate better understanding between peoples. And that's why our work in policy in the Council of Europe and in the UN is very significant. It means we are trying to attempt to try to improve what the world will be in the future. Intercultural dialogue is about engagement, getting people involved in critical and constructive debate and discussion. It's fine to have differences, but let's understand one another. And it's about building a deeper understanding of the world and the views of different people in the world. And as a geographer, I look at the world with a geographer's eyes. And I think they're different to other people's perspectives. If you're a psychologist, you look at the world with a psychologist's eyes. And so as geographers, we bring some specific perspectives to our understanding. So intercultural dialogue is about building bridges, and it's about creating a society that is based on mutual respect for one another, respecting difference, tolerating people, tolerating the difference, in fact. Culture is about identity and creativity. It's a way of transmitting knowledge, experience, and it's based on our differences, the different backgrounds we have, the history, the geography, the places that we live in are very culturally important. And so culture, therefore, has a really key way of being involved in education, is what I'm saying here. And then finally, as a definition, dialogue is reciprocity, enabling interaction, finding channels for engagement, either creating a commitment to agree or to compromise. But it's about generating discussion, debate, and so on. Exactly what is happening today when Joe Biden will meet Professor Putin. They will sit down and they will try to reach some sort of commitment to work together. And that will be based on compromise. And therefore intercultural dialogue, and we will see it today in our news this evening, what compromise that they have reached. And dialogue is about trying to find a common ground, shared and collaborative principles to work together. And then finally, digitalization. Let's look at the context of the report I was asked to make. Digitalization is the transformation of information into digital format, and it's about widespread communication, about, for example, me being here able to talk to you, although it's not a dialogue, it's a one-way dialogue, because you don't have the ability to challenge me or discuss in this framework. Digitalization does provide opportunities for communication, but it also in other platforms will enable collaboration and even democratic engagement of people. And it's said that digitalization enables people to become democratically engaged and involved where normally they would not be able to be. So most governments around the world have been trying to take their democratic engagement with citizens online through digital tools. And it's my perspective that for intercultural dialogue to be relevant in the modern world, we need to identify and use digital spaces for discourse. And some of the work my association's been doing has been on projects which have attempted to do this. And one project, which I don't have a slide about, is something called the Youth Meter project. But if you look it up, you'll find there we tried to use digital platforms to engage young people in Europe to talk about the policies that they wanted for the future of their world. Digitalization is technologically mature. It satisfies our basic needs. It has done, especially during COVID times. It's become a consumer commodity. Almost everyone now is digitalized, is connected in some way. It's also a disruptive technology. It changes the way we are and the way we behave. It creates disruption in our normal world. And that means I think it's game-changing, it's radical and revolutionary, and we ought to be able to use digitalization to enable better intercultural communication. And some of the data that I was asked to look at backs this up. So technology is about access anywhere, anytime. It could be this morning, it could be 2 a.m. I could be speaking to an audience in New Zealand. It could be an audience in Russia or wherever, and yet we are connected. So the future of technology, as identified in The Guardian in 2013, is really anytime, anywhere, 24/7, 365, the potential to interact with other people. And not just one-way interaction, being able to interact and create a dialogue. And so this really summarizes the education, the situation that we're in. And that has been highlighted, especially by COVID and the pandemic, because we were stuck at home. We weren't able to go and visit. I'm at the moment not able to travel to you. So let's look at the data that I was asked to analyze. Here's the first set of data. This is about actions that can help people to live better together. And I highlight the first one. This one shows that the predominant, more people suggested that the best action to help people live together was for them to learn about it in school. 73% in Europe said strongly agreed with learning in school was important, and 72% in SEM countries. So schools and education are critical in the perceived importance of intercultural dialogue. So we need to have a strong educational priority. That's what the Anna Lindh Foundation tries to do. The second set of data to look at is the impact of the media. The impact of media is very high in SEM countries, both positively. 17% of people surveyed felt the media was positive for cross-cultural relationships. 26% said it was negative. In Europe, the data is very different. People are much less influenced by media. And understanding this difference is really important. This implies we need to have education through media literacy. So not just education, we need to go to media literacy education and develop that. But if our perceptions are correct. The third set of data is about the impact. What are the most trusted media sources for cross-cultural reporting? What did young people suggest were the most important media sources? Well, it's very interesting. I highlight this one, the social media. And look at the data. 36% of people in SEM countries thought that social media was the trusted media outlet. 36%. In Europe, further down, it was only 15%. So people in Europe don't trust social media. All the fake news that's out there, but people in SEM countries, at least more than 1/3, said it was the most trusted. Interestingly, if you look at the column next to it, the films and documentaries, in Europe, 42% trust films and documentaries, but in SEM countries, only 18%. And books, well, both groups of countries are about the same, about 25% trust books. So here, the impact of social media is quite significant. I also suggest that digital technologies have the potential to provide channels, tools for critical thinking and problem solving, really essential for intercultural dialogue. And let's look at how people interact mainly today. So on the left-hand side, the European countries mostly interact in a cross-cultural way at business or at work. Well, what happened during COVID was people didn't interact during business or work because people didn't go to work. In SEM countries, most people interacted on the internet or social media. And that is really fascinating. It doesn't appear in the European countries. People don't interact cross-culturally, whereas they do in SEM countries. So the point I'm making here is the significance of digitalization and digital technologies in SEM countries to the cross-cultural encounters, to learning about other people and the way they live and the way they are. So there's a strong dependence in SEM countries on the use of digital technologies. And if we use digital technologies, it seems that cultural barriers are broken down. I mean, I could be speaking to you in French, je pouvais vous parler en français, and you could think maybe I was a French person, although my accent isn't as wonderful as a French person. But you see, cultural barriers are reduced online and through digital technologies. And it's the perspective that we modify, the digital technologies modify local culture, but also the dialogue between cultures. And that's why the impact of digitalization is so important. So digital technologies can be used and should be used to enhance intercultural interaction. We should be looking to create an innovative digital culture. And we should try to understand other cultures through your own culture. And the digital technologies provide that expansion. It's through the interaction in digital technologies that we have the potential to improve intercultural dialogue. So what about the impact of digital technology? Well, digital technology can play a really important role. And what do people believe? Well, 53% in Europe agreed with this, but 77% in SEM countries agreed that digital technology can play a really important role. So it's the perception of young people that of the significance of digital technology. The second point on this graph is that 42% in Europe thought that skills for intercultural dialogue can be improved by digital tools. 64% in SEM countries. This is huge belief in the power of digital technologies in SEM countries. And then finally, the bottom one, where that cultural barriers are removed or reduced. In SEM countries, nearly half the people thought strongly that cultural barriers are reduced because of digital technologies. And it's not something I'd thought about before, but for me, I agree with it completely. I feel strongly affiliated to Morocco. I've been to Morocco on 3 occasions and really enjoyed myself in the desert, in the mountains, in the cities, with the people and learning about the culture. But my feeling is almost because of the digital technology this morning, I almost feel like I am with you. There are no barriers. Having experienced it once, my mind and my heart and my body is actually in Morocco right now. So I believe that the opportunities can be enabled by digital technologies, and that digitalization can have a huge impact, especially in SEM countries, to interact. The impact of schools perceived is very low. Schools come right at the bottom, only 2% in SEM countries and 10% in Europe. Whereas on the internet, we have a huge impact. I mean, almost 60% of people felt that digitalization, the cross-cultural encounter, the best way of doing it was actually through social media in SEM countries. In Europe, it's different. It's more business and work that is important. So let me summarize and my thinking about what the data and the results are really showing. So I'm coming to conclude. If we think about intercultural dialogue and virtual mobility, I think there are 3 guiding principles that Anna Lindh ought to try to follow, and the data appears to show this. The first principle is that of openness. The need to create an open, interactive system, digital system in Euromed. The fact that we ought to be able to interact like this anytime, any day, any way. If it's safe and it increases our understanding of other cultures and other peoples, then I think that should be a highlight. What that system is, I don't know. I hope our researchers and our scientists, and maybe you, will be able to suggest what it might be. The second principle, I think, is we need to have experimentation. We need to innovate. And COVID the pandemic was a great time of innovation. People were experimenting with artistic activities online. Artistic cultures were, museums, galleries, art, music was all closed. And people started to experiment with doing recitals online. Here in the United Kingdom, choirs met remotely online and sang together. I mean, there was a lot of experimentation in culture and arts, and we need to encourage that experimentation. And the third principle is that there needs to be cooperation and networking. And this needs to happen at Euromed level. So my recommendations in my article, which will be published as part of the report on the Ipsos Mori survey, is that we need to go and have digital media literacy. Education is so important. That technology increases the possibilities for dialogue, but that we need to create, find, identify, develop virtual spaces for intercultural dialogue. And that post-pandemic, we need to have innovative education programs We need to train teachers because schools, as I said at the beginning, are important. And we need to identify and find shared spaces online. And so this diagram really sums up many of the things. I found it on the internet, I stole it, but it really sums up many of the features. Intercultural dialogues about identity. What is our digital identity? Well, it's different to our face-to-face identity. We're networked. We need to bring education. We need to be participative. We need to engage and connect and cultivate. And I thought some of the key words in this doodle really were important. That's the link to the presentation. And you can also follow Eurogeo on social media. I don't know if there are any questions. Those are my contact details. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm more than happy to respond. And I'm going to stop my share. And maybe there are questions from the audience or from the academics or from the staff. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your yes. Thank you, sir, for your thank you, sir, for your eminent presentation. And of course, there are questions from students. Any question, please? I have a list. Number one. Before. Huh? Any question?
Like most students, they're too shy. I'm presenting there that the world in the future cannot survive without the digitalization. You know, that the communications that we have between peoples are really going to need to be enhanced by the digital activities. But we're
okay, general question. So please, Mr. Carr, have you done any research about the other countries and UK? What's the impact of the virtual mobility on intercultural communication in United Kingdom and the other countries?
Thank you. First of all, this was not my research. It was a survey undertaken by a research organization called Ipsos Mori. They do opinion polls, and they were contracted by the Anna Lindh Foundation to undertake a survey of young people in, I think, about 20 countries in Europe and in North Africa. And they interviewed, I think, 200 people, 200 young people in each of the countries. And from this, they analyzed the data based on the questions. And the results I was showing you was just one aspect, one small part of the survey that took place. My area of expertise is in the use of digital technologies in education and in learning. And I was asked to review the questions that related to media and digital technologies in order to summarize their research. My research is on empowering people to become active citizens through technology, to try to get people to express their opinions, but based on data, based on factual information. And so the work that we've been doing in Eurogeo is encouraging organizations to open information, open data, so that we can understand why politicians and policymakers are making the decisions that they are doing for us on our behalf. And in some cases, empowering people to challenge the politicians, because the data that they are using, maybe they misinterpret it. In other words, trying to train young people to analyze data, and especially journalists, young journalists and young people who feel they want to have their voice heard, but you need to back up any discussion or any argument with factual information. So it's about data literacy. So media literacy and data literacy are really very, very important. To come back to your question also about the United Kingdom, in the United Kingdom, we have been in lockdown for a long time. We are still partly in lockdown. And in fact, the region where I live was in lockdown from November until April. We were closed for 6 months, which meant we couldn't see our families. We couldn't see our grandchildren. We couldn't work. We were not allowed to go to work in offices. The universities were closed. Students were living on the campuses, but there were no live lectures. They were not in a room. So we had to adapt. And the major mode of adaptation was using digital technologies like this. And for me, it's something that happened organically. I've used technologies like Zoom for 20 years, more than 20 years. I'm one of the early adopters of technology. And for me, it was really interesting. We've been trying to promote the use of these technologies because they can be used to enhance learning. You know, this is being recorded and people can revisit the talk. They can think about it and come back with more critique or questions. They can maybe come up with new ideas based on revisiting. So I think the digital technologies offer us power. In the UK, we are relatively well off with technology. I also think you are well off in Morocco. You have a national, relatively high-speed broadband system, which allows you to access the internet almost from anywhere and anytime. You are actually well in advance of many other countries in the world in terms of the speed of the connectivity. It may not seem like this in your institution, but I know I've been in the mountains, in the high mountains in Morocco. As a geographer, I love the high mountains. And I've been there and I've had a phone signal, which means I can get on the internet. And therefore, the coverage in your country, in some cases, is better than the coverage here in the UK. Our mountains are not covered as well in terms of that. So I think it's a process that we're going through. The pandemic has led to us changing what we do. And the point is, we need to learn from it. We need to research it and understand it, and we need to improve what we do. And I think it's a great opportunity to really research the role of digital technologies in intercultural communication. You know, how do they help us understand them? Thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And we want to leave this without an applaud, please, for this. He's talking about Morocco, and he said he visited Morocco and he liked it. And he said that we are very advanced in the technological way. The Moroccans are highly far in the world. So we have to applaud for ourselves as Moroccans. Okay, thank you. So,
au revoir et merci. Hein?
Merci, merci. Thank you. I would let the floor to Mr. Wadey, the chef of the field of the association. He has to continue the conference.
Bon courage.
Merci. Merci, monsieur. What time is it in...
I will share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if...
No question. In French, in Arabic, in English, in Tamazight, in Tashilhit, in Tarifit, no problem.
Can someone help in sharing?
Yes. Who can help us share the... Can you help us share the... What is the technological? Yes, miss. Yes, miss. Go on. Yes, please. So if you have any question, so have you understood the topic of the conference? Okay, so no question.
Moi, j'ai une question pour les étudiants. Je vais la poser en français.
Allez, vas-y. Allez, partage.
Comme ça, il y aura une interaction.
Ok.
Est-ce que vous pensez que la nouvelle technologie qui nous a envahis pendant cette période de la pandémie va remplacer la chaleur humaine, le contact humain, la présence dans les cours, dans les pratiques? Qu'est-ce que vous pensez? Réagissez, répondez-moi. En arabe, en français, il n'y a pas de problème. Non, non. تفضل.
Tendance. The first
Elle ne va
one.
pas remplacer. Donc,
Yes. Elle est déjà pas.
interagir avec le prof et avec les collègues, avec les
تاهم.
Ok.
ça ne remplace pas. Une autre, oui.
Mademoiselle. سالتي. ما كتبانش.
D'accord, mais est-ce que vous pensez que nous, on veut l'interculturalité, on veut l'échange? Est-ce qu'à travers ce nouvel outil, on va réussir, ou il y aura un impact de cet échange, de cette interculturalité entre nous et entre, par exemple, les Européens ou les Américains ou les Asiatiques? Est-ce que vous avez compris ma question?
ديجا ملي كنديرو هاد البارطاج كتدير اوتوماتيكمون.
كيما كدير اوتوماتيكمون. دخلت كانت.
Mais à travers cette digitalité, est-ce que c'est toujours la personne qui est en contact avec vous? Est-ce qu'elle est vraiment réelle? Est-ce qu'elle vraiment, elle vous raconte sa vraie culture? Est-ce qu'elle a les principes vraiment qu'elle vous dit qu'elle a, ce que vous voulez constater? Parce qu'il ne faut pas oublier les fausses informations. Tout ça, ça rentre dans cette digitalité. Ne pensez-vous pas que ça peut compléter, mais ne jamais prendre la place? يمكن لا تكمل واحد التواصل ما بيننا وما بين حنا كأساتذة.
Sorry, just we are trying to share our screen. I think we have a technical program.
ولكن ما يمكنناش تحل محل وتلعب الدور ديال اللقاء التواصلي اللي تيكون حي.
هو ملي كنت كتبارطاجي
الحوار النقاش
ما كنتيش بارطاجي كنتي خليتيه يسير.
يعني فعلا ابتكار واختراع وتطور غير ناهي نتعاملوا به، ولكن ما ياخذش لنا المكانه ديال واحد الحاجه اللي هي تخلي داك التواصل الانساني والعلاقه الانسانيه باش كدير في المدرج ولا في نشاط من الانشطه ولا لانه si parce qu'il y a un étranger avec nous, on ne connaît pas l'arabe. Alors, je leur avais dit que c'est vrai, on a besoin de la créativité, de l'innovation, de nouveaux outils de communication, mais jamais ils ne prendront la place du présentiel, du partage humain, de la chaleur humaine. Moi, je le considère c'est un complément qu'on peut utiliser en cas de, comme le cas de la pandémie. C'était grâce à la digitalisation qu'on a pu participer à des conférences, soit par Zoom, soit par plusieurs moyens. Mais faut pas toujours le prendre comme le seul outil qu'on peut utiliser dans notre vie. Surtout avec les fausses informations, avec
Votre
les
écran
comptes,
est
avec
partagé.
ça pose encore un problème. Il faut toujours le considérer comme un moyen.
Il est partagé.
Il complète. Quand il y a des difficultés à être présent, on peut communiquer à travers la digitalisation, Internet, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Oui, madame.
Mais quand on a l'occasion d'être en présentiel comme cela, jamais la digitalisation.
Oui, madame. On va continuer notre présentation avec.
Merci pour votre intérêt.
Avec Monsieur Wadi.
Our
The floor
screen
is yours.
shared. Do you see our screen? Do you see? Okay. Okay. Ah. أنا ما أعطينش So أنا مشى الدكتور مشى
ما بغيتش دير انت لا بريزونطاسيون. about the cultural mobility, and we are going to talk about cultural mobility, and we are going to start with best note-taking methods. What are the best note-taking methods? The first one is the outline method. So what is the outline method? It's like you see, it's a plan. You do, the outline is a plan. Then we are going to see, this is, you take a paper, you write the title, okay? As I told you, write the title, and you write the date, and you write the keywords. That's what we call the first method. Thank you.